The silence you think is strength might be shaking her more than your words ever did. And what I'm going to share with you near the end may completely change how you see your restraint. If you value depth over drama, strength over noise, take a second to like and subscribe. Not for me, but so you don't miss conversations most men were never taught to have. Now let's talk. When you choose silence, especially after conflict, distance, or emotional disappointment, you believe you're protecting your dignity, you're choosing composure over chaos, you're choosing self-respect over chasing, and in many cases, that's growth. But here's the part most men don't understand. Your silence does not land in a woman's nervous system the way you think it does. To you, silence can mean, I'm done arguing, I need peace, I refuse to beg, I'm focusing on myself. To her, silence often feels like, I've been emotionally abandoned, I don't matter anymore, I've lost him, he no longer sees me. And when a woman feels unseen or emotionally disconnected, it does not always show as tears. It doesn't always show as texts. It doesn't always show as apologies. Sometimes it shows as pride. Sometimes it shows as pretending she doesn't care. Sometimes it shows as matching your silence, not because she is unbothered, but because she is overwhelmed. High value men often underestimate their emotional impact. You assume that because you are calm, you are not affecting her. Because you are quiet, you are not powerful. But emotional restraint can be louder than shouting. When you withdraw attention, affection, or communication, especially if she once felt secure in it, the absence becomes noticeable. Your consistency created emotional safety. Your silence disrupts it. And here is where Stoicism is often misunderstood. True Stoicism is not emotional disappearance. It is emotional control. There is a difference. When your silence is rooted in clarity and self-respect, it carries weight. When it is rooted in wounded pride, it carries confusion. Women are deeply sensitive to emotional shifts, not because they are weak, but because connection is often their primary way of measuring relational security. If you were once present, expressive, and engaged, and now you are distant, she feels that contrast intensely. And the most dangerous assumption you can make as a man is this: if she's not reaching out, she must not care. Sometimes she is hurting more than you imagine, but she is also protecting herself from rejection. Silence creates space. Space creates reflection. Reflection can create longing, or it can create detachment. Which one happens depends on what your silence represents. And before you assume you are the only one feeling the weight of distance, understand this: a woman who once valued you does not become emotionally neutral overnight. She feels the shift. She questions it. She replays conversations. She wonders when the warmth disappeared. But she may never tell you that, because silence doesn't just test her feelings, it tests her pride. Now let's dig deeper into what her hurt really looks like. Not what she says, not what you see, but what she feels underneath. When you step back, when you choose silence instead of arguing or chasing, you may think you are giving her space. And in some ways, you are. But what she feels in that space is not peace, it is uncertainty. And uncertainty, left unchecked, is heavy. It is disorienting. It activates the parts of her brain that are wired to scan for loss, for danger, for the potential of rejection. Most men think emotions are obvious: anger, sadness, frustration. But her hurt often manifests quietly in restlessness, in moments of overthinking, in subtle testing, or even in pulling away emotionally without saying a word. She may laugh. She may be polite. She may go about her day as if nothing has changed. But inside she is replaying your last interactions. She is asking herself, why is he distant? Did I do something wrong? Does he still care? Here's the paradox. Your silence, your calm, is both the source of her pain and the trigger for her reflection. She is processing the reality of your value, your consistency, your boundaries, your ability to not bend to drama. She senses that you are not easily swayed, not easily won over. And that recognition can stir a mix of admiration, regret, and yes, emotional hurt. This is why high-value men are misunderstood. You think strength is about speaking louder, about asserting control through words. In reality, your power is in what you do not say. It is in your quiet, your restraint, your refusal to be reactive. And that quiet is teaching her something she may resist but cannot ignore. She is facing a man who prioritizes himself, who has limits, who will not compromise his dignity for emotional convenience. But this is delicate territory. Silence can be powerful, but it can also be misread. If your withdrawal feels cold or punitive, it breeds resentment instead of respect. If it comes from ego or anger rather than clarity, it confuses her instead of teaching her. Emotional intelligence is the difference between creating space for growth and creating space for detachment. And there is one truth you must understand. When a woman is quietly hurting, it does not mean she will act. It does not mean she will chase. Often she will retreat, protect herself, and attempt to regain her balance internally. She may appear indifferent while feeling deeply unsettled. So if your goal is to be a high-value man, stoic, composed, yet genuinely impactful, your silence must be intentional. It must carry meaning beyond absence. And here's the subtle insight most men miss. Your silence, when rooted in emotional clarity, is teaching her more than words ever could. She is learning about boundaries. She is learning about respect. And whether she admits it or not, she is learning the cost of losing a man who does not compromise his integrity. Her hurt is real. Your silence is the mirror, and the reflection she sees can either lead her toward understanding or away. Now let's explore why this silence hits harder than you realize, and why it's not about punishment, but about truth. When a man withdraws, many assume the emotional burden lies with him. They think, I'm quiet, I'm composed, I'm in control. But the reality is far more complex. Emotional impact does not reside solely in action, it resides in perception. Your absence, your calm, your refusal to react becomes a lens through which she examines her own feelings, her own choices, her own value. Humans are wired to notice patterns. She has likely experienced your presence, your attention, your emotional availability. Now that pattern is disrupted. Her brain doesn't simply notice silence, it interrogates it. It searches for answers in past conversations, in her own behavior, in the meaning of your restraint. And this internal dialogue can be more emotionally exhausting than any argument ever could be. This is where your high-value presence truly matters. The strength of a man is often measured in what he refrains from doing, not just in what he does. When your silence is deliberate, it communicates more than words could. That you have boundaries, that you value yourself, and that you will not be manipulated by urgency or insecurity. But here's the subtlety most men miss. Her hurt is often invisible. It doesn't always present as confrontation or complaints. Sometimes it appears as subtle shifts, quiet distance, overthinking, overanalyzing, or even attempts to test your composure. She is emotionally processing your absence while masking the intensity of her feelings. And if you misread these signs as indifference or lack of care, you risk misunderstanding the very depth of her emotional response. There's a psychological truth here. Humans respond to absence in ways that mirror attachment and valuation. When you withdraw, you are forcing her to face her own reliance on your emotional presence. She may not articulate it, and she may not even consciously recognize it, but internally, she is negotiating the gap you've created. She is questioning what she thought was secure, what she assumed would always be there. This is why Stoicism, when applied with emotional intelligence, carries profound weight. It is not coldness. It is not avoidance. It is presence in its quietest, most disciplined form. The man who understands this does not seek to control. He seeks to reflect truth, the truth of his own boundaries, the truth of his own self-respect. And this is the essential lesson. Her pain is not a reflection of weakness. It is a reflection of connection, of how deeply she valued the security and emotional availability you once provided. The silence you wield as strength can become a teacher, a mirror, and a boundary all at once. It can clarify what is meaningful, what is taken for granted, and what must be respected. But for that to happen, your silence must carry intention, awareness, and the calm certainty of a man who is rooted in himself. Anything less risks confusion, resentment, or emotional withdrawal. She is hurting more than you see, and that hurt, when met with patient awareness, can reveal truths that no conversation ever could. Let's talk about the unspoken tension that silence creates. The invisible weight she carries when you stop responding in ways she once expected. When a woman senses your withdrawal, her mind begins to race, not with anger necessarily, and not with resentment alone, but with questions she may never voice. She asks herself things like, did I push too far? Did I misread him? Was I not enough? And in these silent moments, the emotional impact is magnified because it is internalized. She cannot confront it externally because your silence leaves no clear target. The result is an emotional storm contained entirely within herself. Many men believe that strength is being unaffected, that their calm detaches them from responsibility for how their presence or absence affects her. But emotional intelligence teaches us something different. The impact of your behavior is inseparable from its perception. Silence is not neutral. It communicates. It speaks volumes. sometimes louder than any argument or confrontation could. This is where high V-value men differ from reactive men. A reactive man might lash out, yell, or argue, creating noise, confusion, and drama. A high-value man, grounded in his principles, exercises restraint. He understands that emotional control is not about suppression. It's about clarity. And in that clarity, there is both power and consequence. Her hurt is often invisible because she shields it. She may smile, joke, or continue her day with apparent composure. Yet internally, she is navigating the uncertainty you have introduced. She reflects on the past, on moments of connection, intimacy, and consistency that now feel disrupted. And in this reflection, she is often confronting feelings she wasn't fully conscious of before. Regret, longing, or recognition of what she may have taken for granted. It's important to understand that this isn't about punishment. Your silence is not meant to hurt her. It is meant to communicate a boundary, that your emotional presence is not a given, that your attention is earned through respect, and that your self-respect is non-negotiable. And here's the subtlety. While she feels the weight of this withdrawal, she also begins to evaluate herself. She considers her own behavior, her choices, her assumptions. Your silence forces self-reflection, not just emotional reaction. And this is a profoundly transformative process for her and for the relationship dynamic itself. A man who practices intentional silence knows that impact does not require explanation. Words are often redundant when presence and consistency have already established value. Her emotional response, though hidden, reveals the depth of connection she felt and the cost of its temporary absence. She is processing more than you realize. She is questioning more than she will ever admit. And the space your silence creates is not empty. It is charged with reflection, insight, and potential change. If wielded wisely, your calm and intentional withdrawal teaches lessons that words cannot convey, and it illuminates truths she may have overlooked. Now let's examine the most misunderstood aspect of silence, how it shapes her perception of your value and why it can cut deeper than confrontation ever could. When you stop responding immediately, when you step back instead of chasing, when you maintain your composure instead of reacting, she notices. Not always consciously, and not always in a way she can articulate, but the impact is undeniable. It signals a shift. It signals that your presence is not automatic, that your emotional energy is not limitless, and that your respect must be earned, not assumed. This is where many men misread the signs. She may appear calm, even indifferent. She may laugh more, try to act as if nothing has changed, or even test your silence in small ways. These behaviors are not evidence that she does not care. Often, they are her way of managing the discomfort your absence creates while trying to maintain her sense of control. Internally, she is replaying conversations, analyzing your words, evaluating your actions, and feeling the weight of your restraint. Here's a truth that high-value men often understand intuitively. Emotional absence creates clarity in the presence of noise, distraction, or constant reassurance. The mind can avoid the truth. Silence removes distraction. It forces reflection. It reveals priorities, intentions, and unspoken truths. And in that reflection, she begins to see your worth in a new light. Not because you declared it, but because your behavior demonstrates it. It's important to note that this does not mean she will act immediately or chase you. Often her process is internal, quiet, and invisible. She may retreat, she may rationalize, she may mask her feelings with humor or politeness. But make no mistake, the emotional energy she expends is real, and it is a direct response to the consistency and intentionality of your silence. Silence, when wielded with emotional intelligence, communicates powerfully without aggression. It communicates that you have self-respect, that you honor your boundaries, and that your emotional availability is conditional on respect and alignment. This is the essence of Stoicism applied in relationships. Presence, control, and clarity expressed without manipulation, pressure, or hostility. And here is the subtle insight most men miss. Her emotional response to your silence is often deeper than anything a conversation or argument could evoke. It is introspective, revealing, and sometimes transformative. It brings to the surface feelings she may have avoided acknowledging. Admiration, longing, regret, or realization of what she may have taken for granted. Your calm, your restraint, your refusal to be reactive. All of it shapes her perception, her understanding, and her emotional growth. She may hurt, she may question, she may even fear the shift, but she is learning something crucial. the value of a man who does not compromise his integrity for convenience, validation, or drama. And in that learning, even in her pain, there is respect. Even in her quiet struggle, there is awareness. She is processing more than words could teach. She is reflecting on what you mean to her. And your silence, if guided by clarity, is the instrument of that understanding.